This session is boards aren't just for big companies, tools every family business should know. I'm Arent Canfield, your moderator, and today we have Andrea Steinbrenner. So we're going to cover in this session, your family business has come too far to leave its future to chance. In this session, we'll break down how to design an advisory council or board of directors that actually works for your family business, not against it. From defining the right structure and recruiting the right people to setting expectations and sharing the right information, you'll walk away with a clear roadmap for putting experienced, trusted voices in your corner. Whether you're the generation that built it from inheriting it, this session will help you govern with intention. So please welcome Andrea Steinbrenner.
Thanks, Aaron. Good morning. Some familiar faces, lots of new faces. Thanks for coming and hearing us talk about boards this morning. I'm Andrea Steinbrenner. I'm the CEO of Exit Consulting Group, and we're an M&A advisory and consulting firm based out of Southern California. We have clients all over the country, and we love being part of PFBA, so we're happy to be here again. This is a near and dear topic to myself and my team that's here. I am actually the G2 in our business, and we are living and breathing all of the things you are going through, including setting up an advisory board right now. So we practice what we preach and hit the same mud puddles that all of you do, so it's very real. So before we get started, I've now got some veterans in the crowd so they can lead you through the exercise. I start every meeting with this exercise, and I do it for a couple of reasons. I'm going to prompt you through it. We're going to do it at your tables, and I'm going to tell you why we do it. So it's called HHBS. Once you start it, you're not going to want to stop it. My team won't let me start a company meeting without it. I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and there's only one rule. You can't say good and you can't say fine to all of the prompts. So I'm going to ask you, and you're going to ask each other at your table, rapid fire, 1 or 2 answers around the table 4 times. How's your head? How's your heart? How's your body? How's your spirit? Okay, how's your head? How's your heart? How's your body? How's your spirit? It gets a little weird with that last one, right? So we're going to pause, take a minute, go around the table, tell everyone how you're doing. Okay, like 1 more minute. All right. Come back to me. I know, it's hard. It's okay if you didn't get through them all. You get the idea. So the reason why I start every meeting with this exercise is because, first and foremost, how often do we check in with ourselves? How often do you say, how's my head doing today? How's my heart doing today? How's my body? How's my spirit? When was the last time I even acknowledged I had a spirit, right? Especially in a business setting. And then how often do we actually check in with other people? What do we say? Hey, how's your day? What do they say? Fine. How many of you tried to say fine or good, right? It's not a real answer. But if we're going to be inside business, particularly family business, we have to be able to have real conversations. And the only way we have real conversations is if we're having real conversations with ourselves, and then we're asking actual prompts where we're getting real feedback back. The core of being successful in family business is communication. A lot of nods, right? But how do you go in and start having vulnerable conversations? Well, just ask how someone's head's doing that day. It's pretty simple when you break it down. So we're going to be talking about boards. The foundation of boards, why we establish boards, is this big, scary word called governance. What does governance mean? It's a fancy way of saying decision-making. What's the core root of decision-making? Honest communication, right? So you see where I'm going with it. So I love this prompt. I use it in every talk. No matter if I talk for 30 minutes or for 3 hours, this is the favorite thing people walk away with. So I always use it. All right, we'll get into it. You all have a workbook. We're going to actively work in it while we get through the talk today. I only have 20 slides, so not death by PowerPoint today. It's going to be interactive. I'm going to go fast because there's a lot to cover, and I want to make sure we get you soup to nuts in what this topic is. Throw your questions in the app. Arent will prompt if we need to stop. We can stop throughout and ask questions. My partners all have a booth out in the hallway as well, so please visit it if you have more questions and we don't get to them in the session today. So our agenda. So we're going to talk about why most family businesses wing it. Board of directors versus advisory council. They're two different things, actually. They're two different things. Defining your purpose and choosing the right structure. One size doesn't fit all. Building and recruiting the right team. And we're talking about your board. What the BOD or AC, so board of directors or advisory council, does and what to share with them. Do you pay them? Are they volunteers? Are we making it, is it a long-term decision? Or are we just trying to solve an immediate problem by throwing this fancy thing on top of it? And what are your next steps? All right? Okay. How many of you have ever wished you had a trusted expert in the room to make a big decision? Lots of hands. I think this is awesome, and I thought what Dr. Wu was teaching us this morning plays right into this, because the thing he was impressing upon was having a good social support. And the reason why we set up boards is because what we're trying to find is social support, right? So I thought he played right into it, because what are boards solving for? Stressors. Stressors we can't solve for on our own, so we bring in outside people to help. So I thought exactly what he was talking about played right into why we might establish one of these entities inside of our family business. All right, reality check, page 1. I'm putting you to work. You've got questions to answer, and I'll prompt you. How many of you have made big decisions in a vacuum? How many of you don't have outside support, so you might have some blind spots? You've got someone who's really good at marketing, but they're running finance because it's mom or dad. You have someone who's running bookkeeping, but they're also running operations because we don't want to go hire the next person. Family dynamics bleeding into the business. This probably doesn't happen to any of you, but maybe everyone in B and C, right? Succession planning keeps you from pushing back. We had a great conversation at breakfast this morning about how talking about succession planning is part of succession planning. A board of directors and an advisory council is one of the most powerful and underused tools in a family business. A lot of times because we just don't know what to do with it and how to structure it. So hopefully today you'll walk away with a couple ideas on that. So what's the difference? We have a board of directors, and we have what we call an advisory council. Sometimes it's called an advisory board, but for sake of not confusing the talk today, we split them up, right? So your board of directors, they have a legal fiduciary responsibility. They're legally required to represent your company, and there's protections that go along with it. Advisory councils, they're advisors. They give recommendations, but if something goes wrong, they're not taking votes, and so it's on the company. Formal voting. You're actually giving away some power when you have a board of directors. No votes, recommendations. Elected and formally appointed. By who? The shareholders. Who's the shareholders? The family. Sometimes the shareholders are the board of directors. Now we've got all those circles interacting, right? Most of the time your advisory council is recruited. People you know are people who are referred in. Your board usually looks at your financials, right? And we have a formal process on it. Your advisors may or may not see that much depth. And they're right for later stage and larger businesses. Usually you take a board when you have something a little bit bigger, more formal. Not always, though. We've got small companies with boards, and sometimes we have big companies with just advisors. And here's what they share. This is all in your workbook, so you have it. So there are crossovers. And sometimes, some of you might have or be thinking about, you have an actual board of directors, maybe your family members who carry votes, but you also want an advisory council. Other people at the table, outside opinions speaking up. That's okay. You can have it all. You don't have to pick. All right. So, if you remember, I think it was Greg, or maybe it was Eric yesterday, who talked about those 3 circles we talk a lot about at PFBA, right? You have the business, the family, and the shareholders. In this room, sometimes all of you are in all of those boxes, right? So what the job of the board of directors is to help bifurcate decision-making amongst those different silos, because we have competing values amongst those different silos. Not because we're in conflict, because we have competing values. What I mean, shareholders, family members, but maybe some of those who aren't in it say, we want to maximize profits and distributions. Business says we want to hold on to as much money as we can so we can keep reinvesting. Family says we just want to be able to keep going on the family retreat every year, so you guys figure it out. Ringing any bells? Board of directors say, okay, let's prioritize. Tell us what you want to accomplish. Our job is to go hold them all accountable for that. Takes the family dynamic out of it. Okay, before you start recruiting, you have to decide what structure fits you. This is important. And the way you do that is you figure out what are your goals, right? Do you want your outside advisors to hold leadership responsible for performance? Are they actually learning about the business, or are they more there for certain generations to support them as mentors? Do you need formal governance? Does someone else need to be voting because you're either voting by who has more points on the cap table, or you're voting by who's the oldest person in the room and no one wants to rock the apple cart? A lot of nods out there. Is the priority to support the family, or is it to support the business? Are you a family business who's got employees, but it's supporting the family, or are you business who might have family members working in it, but it's about the business and the family benefits? There's no right or wrong, but being clear on what your objectives are helps you be clear on how you show up, both in the family and the business. Most of the time, we all just say yes, which isn't clear, because it's uncomfortable, because we have to start putting stipulations in place. We can't just run free for all. And as we get bigger, we have to put more stipulations in place because more lives are impacted by it. So I'd like you to actually take a minute. I think it's page 2. I'm trying to follow along with you. And see if you can answer some of these questions for yourself on your paper to get the juices flowing. This is how you start, right? What are the goals? What are the objectives that you're trying to accomplish by bringing up the idea of a board or considering bringing other people in? Okay, building the right team. Who you recruit depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If your goal for your advisors is to help the family communicate better, we're probably not going to go recruit a CFO. If the goal is to have financial literacy in the business and we're all really good operators, we're not going to go hire the next operator to come in and support us. It's hard because we actually like to choose people who are like us. We don't realize we do it, but we do. Even if they're people we don't know, we tend to gravitate towards people we like. So pulling in those people who aren't like you helps. I will tell you, my 2 partners and I were all CFOs by trade. So for us to go bring in someone who knows the numbers and books doesn't help us make better decisions as a company. What we're not is marketers. So we're like, we should probably bring in someone who understands how to grow a brand and do marketing, because we're making decisions based on gut, but we don't actually understand the strategy behind marketing, right? So it's our business. When we're talking about the people, I'm a big, if you haven't picked up on it, I get into the heart of things, right? I'm in leadership. I'm in impact. My partners are do. I want someone on the board who believes in woo-woo. They want someone who believes in execution, right? So you have to find the balance to help us communicate better. So, more exercises for you guys. Try to figure out who you would choose to join your board, right? Who would you recommend you go out and recruit? You're going to go back and talk to your family about this or your leadership team. Who do you think you need? This is how you start thinking about those things. Pressure testing who's in the room and who's missing from the room. Sometimes you have a board for your business and you have a family board. You have two different boards going on, but you have two different needs and they don't cross-intersect. What does your family need that it's missing? Are we willing to get vulnerable enough to actually say we might need some help inside the family? Or we'll just make it the business? Real questions, right? They get to the heart of things. Okay. Keep going here. So recruiting your board. So this is important. And I was talking with a family about this. I'm just going to put it all up now. I was talking about the family about this yesterday, about when you actually start to bring in boards and timing on it. And it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So if you say, hey, I'm going to use our example because it's easy. We need a marketing person to join our board. Well, what do we expect of that person? We had a great, I don't know if Tara's in the room. We had a great question from Tara on the app, and she said, we've had a board for a while, but it's not really doing anything. What do we do to get it to do something? And my answer on the app was, well, what do you want your board to do? Do you want them to show up once a quarter and listen to what's going on and poke some holes in it? Do you want them to cheer on the next generation? Do you want them to help the current generation step aside? Do you want them to teach you how to read financials? Do you want them to say the hard thing that nobody's willing to say? So that's when you figure out what is it, and then you actually need to put a description down. How many times have we asked people, especially in family, they'll just come in. Just come in, we'll get you a job. Just come in and sit at the table. We want your opinion. Well, they don't know how to show up, right? So we're not actually setting that person up who's offering their time and support if we don't tell them what we expect of them. And then identify candidates. And I wouldn't do this in a silo. Get a consensus from anyone who's going to interact with that board on who they think should be at the table. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but if you don't know, there's actual people out there who can help you recruit for your board too. So if you want non-familiar faces, which I recommend, they don't have to have voting power, but bring in non-familiar faces, you'll get different perspectives. You don't have to keep them if you don't like them. You can actually say this isn't working, but try, right? We tend to pick people we know and are comfortable with. Interview them. Multiple people interview them. Get perspective on it. If we want our board to be supportive, we need them to be accepted as well. How many times I'll say current gen, because there's lots of multiple generations in here, has mom or dad said, this person's joining the board, or this person's coming into the meeting? Nobody else gets a say. Well, who is that person at the table? Are they really giving a clear opinion? Are they really giving their recommendation? Or are they there as a politician? Truly, right? Because even though they say, oh, I'll say the hard truth, but you're going to invite me back and keep paying my fees, right? So multiple people need to interview them. And then decide on compensation structures. You will get different quality people and different commitments based on what you're willing to compensate them for. There's nothing wrong with it. It's called incentives. We're all motivated by incentives. People will give you their time for free up to a certain point, and the quality of that time up to a certain point. But if there's something else grabbing their attention that they're getting compensated for, they're going to go there first. There's nothing wrong with it, right? But it's what do you need, how much do you need it, and what are you willing to give up in order to give it? Because there's trade-offs. If I pay my board member, what am I not paying? Family members say we want to get along better, but we want the most distributions. So we don't want to pay for an advisor, but we want to communicate better, and none of us know how to communicate. So what's the trade-off? Bad communication or a little bit less distributions? We have to have those conversations. All right. So what do they actually do? What do boards do? What do you think they do? Anyone? Bueller? Guide. What else? Advise, assist. Checks and balances. Yes, that's a good one. Board of directors actually is responsible in corporate governance of hiring and keeping the CEO accountable. I'm going to be Greg. More. What? Perspective. Yeah. Let's go to the middle one first. And I'll put the slides up because they're there and you guys got them. But it's a good conversation. When you have a board of directors, different from an advisory board, they actually play a critical role in corporate governance if you're following corporate governance. So we have those three circles, right? Shareholders, family, business. Shareholders elect the board. They choose their board members. Some of you might not realize this because you're just on the board because you're in the family. But in theory, shareholders elect the board. The board's job as a board of directors is to hire the CEO and hold the CEO accountable for what the CEO says it can do. The CEO gets strategic initiatives from the board that the shareholder said, here's what we want the business to accomplish. The CEO says, here's my plan, board, to go accomplish that. And the board says, we approve it. And then they go back to the shareholders and they say, we approve this plan to hit your goals, and they're going to do it. Right? What I'm saying is the shareholders don't tell the CEO what to do. The CEO doesn't report to the shareholders if you have a board of directors. What's really confusing is sometimes it's all the people at the same table. When that's the case, we do recommend you bring in at least one outside person to say, what hat are we wearing in this conversation? Am I talking to the shareholders right now? Am I talking to the board right now? Or am I talking to the management team? Or are we just having Thanksgiving dinner? Right? It's real. So, in theory, this is high level a lot what these different entities are doing. Regular meetings, right? They're meeting consistently. They're watching business performance. Sometimes they're watching family succession and family growth. They actually bring that in family business. Sometimes Next Gen have higher education paths that the board is helping push and pursue. There's certain financial carve-outs that the board makes sure happen so the family can accomplish family goals. So it's not just all business. We also try to really surface blind spots. We really do. I'll be really vulnerable with you. We have the privilege right now of working with a couple of the families. And I was in Minnesota recently working with two brothers. And I sat in their living room for 3 hours on a Monday afternoon. Flew in. We couldn't move the dime. I said, I'm coming on my own time and dollar to spend 3 hours with you guys. They said, okay. And when I left, they were both mad at me. Thank you. One brother said, I thought you were going to come and be on my side. How could you say that? The other brother said, I thought you were going to come and be on my side. How could you say that? And I said, well, I said both of the things. You got to have people to point out your blind spots. It only took a couple weeks. They're not mad at me anymore. We had breakfast yesterday morning together. But you have to have someone willing to point out the blind spots, not just tell you what you want to hear. You know who will tell you what you want to hear? Your family. Because they love you. And you love them. So you have to have people who love you differently pointing out your blind spots. We also provide perspective on family dynamics. So we get into this a lot, which is, as families get bigger and companies get bigger, more people come into the table. The next gen, and this is actually interesting, we talked about this at the breakout on Tuesday. The age discrepancy between current gen and next gen keeps getting bigger right now. People are having babies later, and they are necessarily pulling their kids into the business early on. So many of the baby boomers in the room, whether you founded your company or you inherited or bought it, you grew up in that business. Even if you started it when you were 20, right? So you've spent decades in it. Well, baby boomers said, hey, we want to give our kids opportunity. You don't have to come to the shop or the field or the yard. You can go to dance class or the soccer field or summer camp or mini college or whatever it is. And then you can go to college and you can major in whatever you want. The sky is the limit. I have a sheet metal company in San Francisco. 150-year-old sheet metal company, third generation, had this exact story. Son majored in broadcasting. He's actually a really cool broadcaster, but then wanted to come in as a project management in a sheet metal company. So you have to have people to say, that doesn't make sense. If he's going to come in as a project manager, he's got to start from the ground up at 30 years old or work his way through, because guess what happens if we don't do that? There's this really crazy N word out there that none of us want to say: nepotism. It's real. It's not bad if we acknowledge it, but it's real. You need people to help you see that. That's why you bring in boards. To say, hey, it's not that this person can't be successful, but we're not setting them up for success. A last name is not a right to sit at the table. A last name is not a right to make a decision. A last name is not a right to sign a check. Well, thank you. Thank you. All right. Clearly, I could go on and on all of these, right? So I'm going to keep us on time here. So what information do you share with a board? Well, it's back to that, it depends. So I majored in accounting, right? And the number one thing they say when you're learning accounting classes, when they ask a question, is it depends. What most people don't realize is accounting is based on assumptions, right? Same thing, it depends. What do you want your board to know? Is your board going to get into the weeds with you and dig into your financials and hold you accountable? You should show them your financials. We have this weird, and I say this as a CFO, so I'm a little bit jaded, but we have this weird propensity to want to protect numbers. Like if someone sees a number, the sky is going to fall in, and all of our secrets are going to be out, and all the skeletons come out, and we can't make decisions if we don't see the numbers, if you have people that are doing that, right? Don't be afraid to share information. You can censor how it's shared. Don't be afraid to share information. If you're going to teach them how to make decisions, they got to see things. Your board will help you with that. Don't be afraid to share information with your board. They'll sign NDAs, they'll sign confidentiality agreements. And frankly, if you don't trust your board, advisory or board of directors to look at your numbers particularly, but everything, they shouldn't be on your board. Because you have to be able to stand there with no clothes on and have people take shots at you so you know where you need to go work out at the gym. And if you can't do that, you don't have the right people there. Family governance rules. How many of you actually have family governance rules? A family charter, this is how we show up as a family, not even associated to the business, but also associated to the business. 2 hands? 2 hands. Really important in family business because everything's all mixed together. My partner, John, he is the CEO of his life, right? And he does this really cool thing where twice a year, he sends out an update to his whole family about what's going on. The economy, the weather, what he's feeling, and the governance rules for his family. And he copies me on it now. And that's made me say, like, well, somebody should be doing this in my family. You know, my mom's one of 8. I got 17 cousins. We're all over the place. I'm like, we need rules. We're crazy. Set them up. They're important. Business governance rules. What's acceptable? As the leaders of companies, we do whatever we want. But is that really acceptable? How many of you have non-family members that might have have family members that aren't in the business that, might have company vehicles, but they're not on the org chart? Company credit cards. They don't do anything with the bit. They're 17. Right? What are the rules of engagement? It's okay if you map it out, but do you know who it's confusing for? The other employees in your company who don't know what the rules are. They don't actually care once you tell them what the rules are. But without knowing the rules, they have an opinion. Boards help you set that up. Succession planning, my favorite topic, right? A board helps you keep succession planning going. It is the number one thing all of you raise your hand when surveyed and say you want to learn about as business owners in generational companies. It is the number one thing all of you do nothing about after you go to a session on it. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. We're talking about an end. We're talking about change. We were talking about this morning at breakfast. And we're not talking about changing everybody else. If I'm going to succeed my company one day, I have to change because someone else has to be able to come in and run it. Let someone else do that, right? Boards help you they keep it on the agenda, right? They make sure we're touching on it. If you say, I want a succession plan by the end of the year, your board's going to say, what have we done about it? Where are we at? How can I help? Shareholder expectations. I'm going to say everyone in this room has very realistic shareholder expectations, right? Boards help punch holes in those. John and I talk all the time. We use a triangle to talk about goals, but I asked John, what's important to you today? Liquidity, legacy, relevancy. He says, yes. I said, I don't know how to make decisions sometimes as a CEO because those all have competing values. If he wants legacy, I need to take all the profits of the company and keep dumping them back into my firm so I can keep building it. That's John's legacy. But if John wants liquidity, I got to take all that money and put it in distributions, so I can't build the legacy. So we have to manage shareholder expectations. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for me to say to John, you're unrealistic, or I can't do that. But somebody else can say, you know, John, I was talking with Andrea, and she was sharing your recent conversation, and there's some competing values in that. And John says, you know what? Oh, wise one, you're right. No, he doesn't. He tells them why they're wrong. Monthly or quarterly financials, I dug into that, right? And then it brings up challenges and opportunities. Your board members should not just challenge you, they should also be bringing you opportunities. They should be opening doors for you. They should be promoting you out in the marketplace. If I'm on someone's board, I want to talk about that company. I'm excited to be part of what they're doing and I want to build it. If it's this big secret thing, you're not actually maximizing their ability to impact your business outside of your business. So we want our boards promoting us out in the marketplace. All right, we talked about compensation. These are just some guidelines for you guys to think about. Again, I'm watching time here. I'm probably missing the workbook too, so I apologize. Things to think about. These aren't set in stone, but these are more of the guidelines. I'll say a lot of advisory councils actually pay their advisors as well. It's usually different. But things to think about in compensation isn't just money, but money's one, and usually it's like quarterly or annual fees. Travel expenses is one. If you want them here at the PFBA conference with you, you cover their entry fee, right? Sometimes you give some equity to your board, particularly if they're coming in to help, raise capital or push you to the next regional growth metric, and they've got contacts there. Sometimes it's voluntary. There's nothing wrong with having voluntary board members. Just be realistic with what your expectations are of them. Actually, even voluntary people, write out the roles and responsibilities you want from them. Show them what you're asking them to do and make sure they're saying yes to that. Before they say yes, they don't know what they're getting into. Okay? All right. Do you need outside support? I mean, my recommendation is yes, right? Because we get tunnel vision in our families. But you can do it yourself, which is nothing wrong with doing it yourself. Especially as you get older in your company, your network gets bigger, you know lots of people. 650 other families in this network alone. You could call any of them and ask advice, and they would probably be decent board members, right? You can design your own structure. We're giving you a playbook here on how to go about that. You can facilitate internal meetings. We're going to come back to that one. And you can it's best when you have a clear vision and strong relationships, right? That's when it works, when you do it internally. And it can be very successful internally. Or you can bring out outside people. There's actual people who create the search, find the members, they facilitate the meetings. They're safe channels for sensitivity. It's really useful for navigating conflict. I'm a big fan, even if you have only board members on your family, you bring in outside facilitation. You have different conversations with an outside facilitator, even if they're just asking questions and listening, than you do with a family member, particularly a matriarch or a patriarch. One, because that matriarch or patriarch is very strong opinionated, which is why you're a successful company, but it's hard to push back on them, right? They're also, you love them and they love you back. And you say, I'll just wait till they're gone, then I'll speak up. But how long have you been saying that? 10 years? 15 years? You're like, oh man, I thought they're gonna be gone at 70. They're 85 and they're still showing up at the board meeting. This is true for some of you. You're all laughing about it, right? The other thing that happens is the next gen will reach out to that outside facilitator and they'll be able to ask more meaningful questions when the meeting comes up. At breakfast this morning, we had a dad and a son. I don't think they're in here. I'd pick on them if they were. But, and they're not doing this, but you can see the propensity. So the dad says, well, I don't want the kid to struggle, right? And the kid says, I give it to me, let me try. And the dad says, well, they don't have enough grit. And the kid says, well, he won't give me the thing that I need. And the dad says, well, I don't want him to struggle. And the kid says, well, I don't know how to get grit. And this thing keeps happening year over year over year over year. How do we break that cycle? It's not, no one's doing it with a bad, everyone's doing it with good intention. But if we don't break that cycle, you still have the 85-year-old showing up at the board meeting because no one else can do it because we're not letting go. So that outside facilitator pushes that initiative. I will tell you, though, if you do not want the outside facilitator and you bring them in, it will not work. Particularly if the matriarch and patriarch are not on board. It'll be really frustrating for everybody, particularly the non-matriarch and patriarch, where they're looking for that facilitator to affect change, and that facilitator is trying to affect change and nobody can do anything. And then we have what's called the elephant in the room, that we all just dance around and pretend like it's not there. All right, making it work long term. Clear charter, clear rules of engagement, clear path to decision making. Accountability measures. Make sure your board's accountable to you. If you're going to invest in them and they're going to invest back, hold them accountable. Say by the end of the year, this is what we want done. Doesn't have to be big, but this is what we want done. Confidentiality agreements are a must. Talked about that. Meeting cadence. I'll tell you, if you haven't started this and you're starting the process, more at the beginning is better. Don't try to start a board and just start meeting quarterly. Meet every month for the first 6 months. Find your rhythm, find your cadence, find your communication flow, and then you can back down if you need to. I think annual meetings aren't enough, particularly if the board's touching the business. They might be enough if it's the family, and that's all you guys can take. Term limits. I always recommend putting term limits on every board seat. The same person can take on another term, but put a term limit on. Because then what happens is the 85-year-old may or may not be sitting in the meeting next year. And it's not because we don't love that 85-year-old. It's because we need a new perspective. They've been the chairman of the board for 30 years. Now we have this thing out in the marketplace called AI. What are we doing about that? Even inside some of our, construction companies and manufacturing companies and distribution companies. Are we bringing in that new perspective? We can't ignore it. I mean, we can, but I wouldn't recommend it. So bringing in that perspective, put terms on it. Put terms on the next generation. Put standards, what makes them even qualified or eligible to be considered. It's okay to have expectations of your family members and your board members. But if you don't communicate them, it's on you. Annual review. Make sure once a year you're not just getting together as a meeting, you're reviewing what the board did as a board. We said we were going to do this, did we do it? Why or why not? We said we need this, did we get it? Why or why not? Really important. Make sure you're evaluating yourself as an actual board, not just the people you're there supporting. All right, common mistakes. I'm just going to flash these up. I bet no one in here's ever really hit these, but we'll just read them for fun, right? You want candor, not comfort. Pick people that will give you that, right? Without structure, the board becomes an ad hoc eventuality. That was that prompt we got in the app before this all started. This is what happened, right? And they want the board. They don't know what to do. Be intentional. I always say, if you're not being intentional, there's a chance you're miscommunicating. Everything we do as leaders in our companies and our families has to be intentional. It's not fair. Get over it. You're in a privileged spot. Embrace it. But you're under the magnifying glass, always. We have to be intentional. Don't recruit your friends and allies, guys. It's really easy and tempting, and some of them are really gifted and talented people. I'll tell you a story. We've got a client out in Las Vegas. He's got tons of food concepts and food courts inside casinos. And I've known him for 15 years. And he's had a board. He was an investment banker back in the day before he became a franchisee. And he's at a board that he worked in investment banking with 40 years ago. And They're all his friends. And for 8 years, I've been scratching my head, and I'm like, the board's not giving him good advice. They're the board of directors. I'm a consultant and advisory. And he's the typical entrepreneur. New shiny object. Let's go start this thing. Don't worry, it's a good deal. It's not too good to be true. I promise. They're going to pay for it, right? And now, today, next week, my team's flying out there to help us downsize the company because the board wasn't giving good advice because they were friends. And when they tried to give good advice, he couldn't hear it. So just be mindful of that. Nobody did it intentionally. But now we're in a situation as a family-run business where we have to make some really hard, fast, painful decisions. Make sure you have a path. Make sure you have a purpose. Set an actual mission statement as a board, not just as a company. Don't treat your board like it's a one-time event or something we have to do to check a box. If that's what it feels like, don't do it yet. It's not time. Maybe never do it. I don't know. You'll know what's right for your business. And be mindful. Don't share too little. I think it's hard to share too much, but don't share too little. We put in sharing too much because sometimes we can get into the habit of, let me tell you all the things that person did wrong for the last 30 years. So when they show up at the board meeting, you know not to listen to them. Might be sharing too much. All right. Next steps. Leave with a commitment today. Pick one thing that you learned, that you heard in your notebook. You're in this for a reason. It's 10:40. We're doing great. We're right at the end. Before we look at questions, write something down on your last page. I just flew through the workbook, guys. But pick something. Do something from the session today. Even if it's go have a conversation or stop at the booth and talk to somebody on my team or call someone from PFBA and say, I want to get into board school. Do something. There's something that's tickling you, right? Call your spouse if they're not here, or your kid, and ask them how their heart is. It could be that. Do something. All right, I think we're there. We made it. So start with one honest conversation. Advisory Council, Board of Directors, just take the first step. We did it. Questions?
So we've got one from the app. When is it a good time to add outside board members like an attorney or a CPA?
I'd say immediately. Even if they're not a board of directors, get that outside perspective in play. They will help. They will help navigate. And if nothing else, they become a bridge for communication. Yeah. Do we have a mic?
Disconnect problem with, it said in, like, for the advisory council,
Yeah.
somewhere around a $500 per meeting allowance with that. To me, that seems extremely low for what, in my mind, I would expect somebody on the advisory council to do, or to be, I would expect some preparation before the meeting and things like that. So that just seems like a really
Well, so
low value.
what we put up there,
Yeah.
you mean? Well, so if you're thinking of a bill rate, it wouldn't be a one-time, 1 hour bill rate, right? But it's saying like, hey, if you're going to ask an advisory council to come and spend 2 hours a month and give you 3 hours of consulting, it's $1,000 a month. It's just to give you a range, not to say, hey, here's $500, show up and tell me what you think for an hour.
Right.
Yeah, great question. Good clarification.
Yeah, should a next-gen CEO who's maybe not a stockholder yet, or is maybe a minor stockholder,
Yeah.
be on the board and still be held accountable or not? What are pros and cons?
Great question. I'm a big fan of if your CEO should be in all board meetings, regardless if they're a shareholder, and they should have a vote. They're responsible for your business, right? So not giving them the ability to vote on business decisions is really difficult. I'm also a big fan of not allowing votes to be dictated by how much equity you hold. If you have 5 board members, have 5 votes that count. Don't have 1 vote that counts and 4 that are just there for pleasantries. Yeah.
So what's come up for me as we've just created our board in the last year is I'm relying a lot on my CFO for profit strategy, and I'm recognizing there are some questions that I don't even know to ask. Does it make sense? And we have an outside CPA firm. I'm wondering if it makes sense to have like an outside CFO come in or ask my CPAs for their eyes in the board meeting. I'm not really sure how to navigate immediate profit reinvestment strategy and also long-term, as my kids are going to be the future owners, how do we plan for that as well?
Okay. I'm going to pick on. So you're kind of answering your question for you, which is you do need this outside support because you're not getting the answers that you need. And your internal CFO isn't always your financial strategist person, depending on your company and what they do. Some CFOs are managerial accountants. They're running your internal financials, which sounds like yours. And then you have other types of financial advice, which is long-term profit share, equity play, gifting, all of that. So I would absolutely bring them in, not because your internal CFO is deficient, it's all in how you frame it, because we need this other perspective in succession planning. Yeah.
Okay.
A financial planner, CPA, somebody who works in that space, tax strategist. Yeah. And frame it for your CFO that this is part of the team. Just you're building your bench as you go. Yeah. Great question. I think we had one more. Then we'll get you out of here.
What are some steps to bring in the next gen into the board, but them not having a vote or being on the advisory position? So is there like a sideline seat?
Oh, she did the sticky wicket one. This one we always get, right? Like, how do we get them in the room? But they don't really get a say, but we want them to know, but we don't want them to know everything. We want them to get experience. So here's my opinion, and you can throw it out the window. You can't be half pregnant. You either are pregnant or you're not pregnant. So if you want them to get experience, put them at the table. Let them know. Your job for the next year is not to say anything. Write down notes. Send us your notes after. We'd love to hear your recap, but we want you to soak it in. Or I want you to chime in on this one topic, so come prepared. Or we're going to have an executive session and we're going to dismiss you for 45 minutes because that's just where we're at in our own succession planning, not because we don't love you and want you at the table. Yeah, great question. Okay, I ran us over, I'm sorry, by 3 minutes, but you're done. You're free, unicorn brains to fly. Have a great rest of your conference.
Let's give Andrea
Thank you
a
so
round of
much.
applause. Thank you.
Yeah.